on the subject of research, how many people have ever read the Concord Review? Anyone know of the Concord Review? Just a few hands. So the Concord Review, I was a high school history teacher, and I found that I kept a copy of the Concord Review in my classroom because it was a good reminder of the distance to travel between the work that I was doing with my students and the work that I aspired to for them. The Concord Review is a collection of history research papers done by high school students. And I encourage you, I think it's tcr.org maybe, I encourage you to take a look at the research papers written by high school students from across the country. It is humbling, to say the least, to see the degree of thoughtfulness of these high school writers and their careful attention to the use of evidence drawn from text. And these are compelling, comprehensive research papers that they have created. And it's a reminder of what the shifts can help us to achieve if we do this work well. That it is possible to prepare students to write at a level that will ensure their success in college and careers, and also to access knowledge in a way that will help them not only in college and careers, but ultimately in life. There was an article not long ago by the publisher of the Concord Review in the American Educator magazine. The title of it is Meaningful Work: How the History Research Paper Prepares Students for College and Life. And I just want to share a few points from that article. One point that Will Fitzhugh, the author of that article, makes is about the gap between what we think we want to do for our students and what actually we are doing for our students. And he talks about a survey that was done in 2002 that showed that 95% of U.S. public high school history teachers consider it important for students to write research papers in history and the social sciences, but that 81% of them never assign a 20-page paper, 62% of them never assign a 12-page paper. So even though they identified research as a very high priority, it was a struggle to find the time and the bandwidth, if you will, for students to undertake comprehensive research papers. And so one of the reasons that we are focusing on the research standards throughout the Common Core, from the earliest grades through high school, is to help ensure that the work on the Common Core creates the time for secondary teachers to focus on research and research skills. Fitzhugh also points out in that article that when surveying college professors about students' readiness to do research writing, now again, high school teachers saying, we think research writing is important, but we don't necessarily have time to do it as much as we would like. When surveying college professors on this same set of subjects, college professors were asked by the Chronicle of Higher Education about students' preparation for college-level writing, reading, and research. Across those three areas, 6% of the college faculty said students were well prepared, were very well prepared around writing, 10% around reading, and 4% around research. So again, it illustrates the gap, and we've talked about this before, and we talk about it when we talk about the number of students who are in remedial courses in college, because they arrive there, and even though they graduated from high school and they have their Regents diploma in hand, they still don't necessarily yet have the fundamental reading, writing, and math skills to succeed in credit-bearing coursework. And so this work on research is an opportunity to try to bridge that disconnect. Fitzhugh writes, and you know I like to use text whenever we are together. He writes, and it's almost as though he could have been reading from the English Common Core standards. To really teach students how to write, educators must give them examples of good writing found in nonfiction books and require students to read them, not skim them, cover to cover. Reading nonfiction contributes powerfully to the knowledge that students need in order to read more difficult material, the kind they will surely face in college. But more importantly, The work of writing a research paper will lead students to read more and become more knowledgeable in the process. As any good writer knows, the best writing emerges from a rich store of knowledge that the author is trying to pass on. Without that knowledge and the motivation to share it, all the literacy strategies in the world will not make much difference. And he goes on to suggest an approach to research not as just a culminating project at the end of high school, but research as a strand, which is reflected in the Common Core, throughout English language arts instruction. He writes, I suggest that our schools start assigning a page per year. Each first grader would be required to write a one-page paper on a subject other than himself or herself with at least one source. At least one page and one source would be added each year to the required academic writing so that fifth graders, for example, would have to write a 5-page paper with 5 sources, ninth graders would have to write a 9-page paper with 9 sources, and so on, until each and every high school senior could be asked to prepare a 12-page history research paper with 12 sources. It's not a large ask, right? In some ways, it's a very simple vision of the idea that from the earliest grades, we have to teach students to draw evidence from text in support of their ideas and arguments, to write from sources. And so that's really the vision that's going to be reflected in our conversations over the next 2 days about the work on the research paper. The idea that there is a benefit to training students in the practice of reading sources, discerning fact from fiction. One of the best projects I had in my teacher preparation as I was preparing to be a high school social studies teacher was an assignment. I encourage you to do this. This is going to sound nerdy, but it actually was quite fun. The assignment was to take a book and to track down, take a text about history, a history book, and track down 10 of the footnotes and find the footnotes in their original text. So I thought this is going to be a very tedious and boring task. But I undertook the task. I discovered that of the 10 footnotes, several of them were just wrong. The author had footnoted incorrectly. They had referenced one part of the book that was unrelated to their topic instead of another. Several of them actually quoted the author out of context in support of the opposite argument that the author of the text was making, which was also very interesting. And a couple of them cut off, we sometimes teach students about words that change the meaning of a sentence. If you take although out of a sentence, it means something different, or but out of a sentence. And I was surprised by the number of times that the author of the text that I was looking at had quoted material, before those, before the but or after the although, in a way that actually, again, created the opposite meaning of what the original author intended. It was an excellent study in the power of research and finding out for oneself the answer to a set of questions, rather than just digesting what one reads. And so that kind of experience, helping students become thoughtful in their discernment about information, is not only an important academic skill in English language arts and science and history, but it's an important life skill. Right? Just, Kate mentioned the Google problem that we have in American culture. Well, if I saw it on Google, it must be true. Right? But if you Google and you find the first 10 sources, those first 10 sources may or may not be true. Right? And any of us in the room who've tried to address our medical needs through Google know the danger of self-doctoring through Google, right? Oh, this kind of hurts. Let me Google what that might be, right? And then that leads you off into a world of hypochondria that is unmatched, right? So teaching students that ability to be discerning consumers of information is critical. And so that's why we're going to emphasize research. And again, it's not just about the research paper at the end, and the Board of Regents is having a conversation about, might we add a requirement for a research paper to high school graduation requirements? But this isn't about the assessment at the end. This is really about how do we embed research and the research practices in our instruction through all the grades.